Hi there, everyone, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's July 14th. Today we celebrate the botanist who climbed Pikes Peak and discovered the columbine, Aquilegia vulgaris. And we'll also learn about the man who is remembered for the boysenberry. And we'll celebrate a 1978 entry from John T. White's Country Diary. And we'll also celebrate the environmentalist who fell in love with Maine. We'll hear a poem written by a Scottish children's author that celebrates grasshoppers. And we grow that garden library with a book about gardening on 1.5 acres, featuring unexpected plant combinations, beautiful photography, garden inspiration, and a testament to the power of microclimates in a garden. And then we'll wrap things up with the night blooming plant that caused a sensation in 1933. But first, let's catch up on some greetings from gardeners from around the world in today's curated news. First up is a post that Danny Perkins shared in the Facebook group for the show. He wrote, "I don't grow a vegetable garden per se, but I do choose to scatter my summer squash, tomatoes, cucumbers, and cantaloupe around the garden, both in the ground and in containers." He said he believes this mix promotes pollination and it gives him better control of the moisture and disease issues. And then he adds, besides, why not enjoy the flowers when gathering supper? Well, I love this idea. And Jen Bullock-Dieter replied, edible landscaping. This is an excellent example of edible landscaping. Then next up is an email from Helen C., who wrote to share her flowers from her garden. This was a bouquet she put together for her daughter's birthday when the peonies were in. Just beautiful. And I have to mention that sound you're hearing in the background is my son working on my potting bench. Now, this is a story. So we jumped on the Home Depot website to see if we could do some curbside pickup of some cedar lumber. But lo and behold, there is no cedar lumber to be found in this area of Minnesota. So the other day, I was on Facebook Marketplace and I saw a woman who was selling her cedar railings. She had 4 8-foot-long sections. And then when we got there to buy the railings, they were only $60. Here she had 4 6x6 posts, which were perfect for the 4 corners of this potting bench that I want Will to build for me. Now, Will loves a project, and we've been holed up here together since early March. And one thing I know about my oldest son is that he needs projects. He needs to be busy to stay happy. Now, when we got home with all of this lumber, he's like, what are you going to have me do with this? So I sketched it out. I showed him how we would use each of these pieces, deconstruct the railings, and then put together a potting bench. And I'm so excited. And this has got to be the biggest potting bench north of the Twin Cities. So I'm really, really excited to use it, especially since my garden here is just getting going and I'm constantly working with pots and containers. In any case, all that drilling that you're hearing in the background is because his first attempt didn't square up the bench exactly, so it's a little wonky looking, and he's going to go back now and fix that and adjust it. But as soon as it's done, I'll take pictures of it and I'll put it in the Facebook group for the show so that you guys can see it. In any case, I share this with you so that if you find yourself in a similar situation where outdoor treated lumber is very difficult to come by and or it's just very expensive, because it is, be on the lookout for outdoor lumber that you can repurpose, like these railings. You'll save a bundle. It's generally already painted or treated in some way, and it has a natural patina. It's already been aged, which I think gives it tons of charm. I almost feel like the wood feels grateful that it can live to serve another day. All right, that's it for today's Gardener Greetings. Now, if you'd like to participate in the Gardener Greetings segment, just send your pics, stories, birthday wishes, and so forth to me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. That's my email. It's jennifer@thedailygardener.org. Make sure you don't send it to thedailygardener.com because that's a completely different website. And don't forget that while you're home, you can listen to the show on Alexa or Google. Just ask either of them to play the latest episode of the Daily Gardener podcast, and they will. It's just that easy. Here's today's curated news. Up first is a post from Janice Lawfrey. She wrote for Garden Design, and she shared a great post called 26 Ideas for a Summer Garden Party. And I don't know about you, but in general, before the pandemic, I found that I was more drawn to entertaining outside than I was inside. And now with the pandemic, that is definitely my modus operandi. That said, when I see posts like Janet's, I can't help but stop and read them because I'm always looking for new ideas to make the backyard or the deck or the porch more inviting. It's more important than ever. And I also want my backyard to be a carefree space. I want any guests that I have to know that they can come back here and feel safe, that everything is positioned in a physically distanced way so that we can all feel comfortable. Now, I'm going to roll through a few of Janet's ideas really quickly just to give you a taste. And then if you want to follow up and read this post for yourself, you can do so in the Facebook group for the show. First, Janice talks about cozying up your backyard space, updating your accessories for a fresh look. Now, in my own space, there have been a couple of things that I've done that have really helped with this. First and foremost, I got some clearance rugs at Target. These are outdoor rugs. They're not overly big. They're 5x7s, but I could put one in front of the grill on the lower patio. And then the other thing that I did that I think really amps up the coziness factor is I've got everything ready to go for when we want to have a fire. And one of the sneakiest little things that I did to help with the whole fire starting thing is we have a spot for our firewood. That goes without saying. But then I called our recycle provider and I asked if they would send over the smallest container that they have. Now, I love our recycle company because their containers are black. So they're pretty easy to hide in the landscape. They're not a vivid blue or pink or some other crazy color. In any case, what do we do with this very small recycle bin? Well, we use it to put newspaper and other miscellaneous packing paper that we receive during the week. All those paper products go in that bin, and then when it's time to start a fire, we just have to walk about 10 feet over, grab the paper out of the bin, crumple it up, and we've got instant fire starter. Now, what's great about this is that container doesn't cost us anything. It's 100% free. And then, of course, we're following Janet's number one tip by cozying up the backyard with a fire. Anyway, just something for you to consider. Now, another suggestion that Janet encourages is to create a happy hour garden. And I thought this idea was especially nice. You know, if you're struggling for ways to utilize your kitchen garden, you could use happy hour as your guide. Maybe you want to have some mint growing in a container on your deck so that when you have mojitos or other drinks like lemonade or some type of summertime drink, you can add a sprig or two of mint. Maybe you want to have a container of cherry tomatoes handy. Or tomatillos, something for the guests to do. They can shell the tomatillos while they're talking and having conversation. And parsley is a great thing to have in your happy hour garden, especially curly parsley. You could use that as your garnish. It can be the last thing you do as you casually put your things out on the table. Just grab some curly parsley and garnish it. Another thing I enjoy putting in my happy hour garden is anything that has a lemon fragrance. So whether that's lemon balm or lemon thyme, it's fun to point out that people can take a sprig of that, crush the leaves and stems, rub it on their hands or their arms and legs, and they have a natural mosquito repellent. Well, that's all the tips I'm going to share with you right now, but trust me, Janet came up with a wonderful list. Some of these you're probably already doing, but some of them just might spark another idea for you. And these days, I think we all have a hunger for the new, for new ideas, just something different to get us out of the doldrums that we have to fight while we live through this pandemic. So that's it for today's gardening news. Now, if you'd like to check out any of my curated news articles and original blog posts for yourself, you're in luck because I share all of it with the listener community in the free Facebook group for the show, the Daily Gardener Community. So there's no need to take notes or search for links. The next time you're on Facebook, just search for the Daily Gardener Community and request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. Here's today's brevities. Today in 1820, the botanist Edwin James, along with two companions, made the first ascent of Pikes Peak in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. Interested in plants from a very young age, James botanized extensively in his home state of Vermont, and he compiled the very first Flora of Vermont. James left his mark on the botanical world when he went on one of the first expeditions of the American West, traveling from Pittsburgh to the Rocky Mountains. On the way up Pikes Peak, James came across the mountain columbine, or Aquilegia caerulea, which ultimately became known as the Colorado blue columbine and then later the state flower of Colorado. And James' account of his climb up Pikes Peak said, "A little above the point where the timber disappears entirely, commences a region of astonishing beauty, covered with a carpet of low but brilliantly flowering alpine plants." And James' words, "a region of astonishing beauty," became the title of a 2003 book on the botanical history of the Rocky Mountains by Roger Lawrence Williams, and it's one of my favorites. After the expedition, James married and settled in Burlington, Iowa. And in a side note that reveals his loving heart, James's home was part of the Underground Railroad. James died in 1861 after an accident. There's a monument to James on Pikes Peak. And also, the Des Moines County Medical Society planted Rocky Mountain blue columbine on his grave in the Rock Springs Cemetery in Iowa. And newspaper accounts say the location of Edwin James' grave was the most picturesque part of southeastern Iowa. And it was on this day in 1918 that Bastille Day was celebrated in Paris. Accounts say it was a clear day. The skies over Paris were filled with French airplanes. Flowers covered the street, and the air was fragrant, and it said that it was sweetly scented with strawberries. And today is the anniversary of the death of the plant hybridizer Rudolph Boysen, who died on this day in 1950. In the 1910s and 20s, Boysen had been playing around with plant genetics. He was working on an 18-acre farm that was owned by John Lubbins in Napa Valley. One June morning, Boysen took a walk along a creek bank to inspect some of his new berry creations. He was astonished when he saw that one of the vines bore a fruit that was almost 2 inches long. The fruit would become known to the world as the boysenberry. Boysenberries are similar to blackberries, but they have a larger, juicier, and sweeter fruit. The boysenberry is a cross between the loganberry, the raspberry, and the blackberry. In 1927, Boysen advertised them as the sensation of the 20th century. Now, as luck would have it, the grower, Walter Knott, had been looking for new varieties of berries. And when he got some of Boysen's plants, he knew it was the berry he had been looking for over the past decade. Knott gave Boysen credit by naming the plant in his honor. But Knott managed to make an empire for himself with the proceeds, establishing the world-renowned Knott's Berry Farm. As for Boysen, he never earned a dime from the boysenberry. And it was on this day in 1978 that John T. White's country diary was shared in The Guardian. Here's an excerpt. The calendar said July 1, but the weather over Dungeness was more suited to January. Low clouds swept over the lighthouse, and the foghorn sent out its melancholy warning 3 times every half minute into the misty channel. As I explored the shingle wilderness, I was accompanied by the sea swallows, the terns flying so low that they zigzagged between the willow scrub like yachts tacking so close that I could see crabs and small fish in their beaks. I decided to follow their route and stumbled over a succession of shingle ridges that mark the steady seaward extension of the headland. The flora, at least, was summery in its brilliance. Viper's bugloss, dark blue, red-tipped, standing stiffly in the bare shingle, valerian towering above the carpets of yellow stonecrop, and the white flowers of sea beet rising from clumps of thick, fleshy leaves. Most remarkable in that wild garden was the Nottingham catchfly, a rare plant, highly localized in its occurrence, its white, ragged petals drooping with water. And it was on this day in 1946 that the environmentalist Rachel Carson arrived in Maine, and she promptly fell in love with the state. That summer in 1946, Carson had rented a cabin on the Sheepscot River. She wrote, "The only reason I will ever come back is that I don't have brains enough to figure out a way to stay here for the rest of my life. My greatest ambition is to be able to buy a place here and then manage to spend a great deal of time here." Well, Rachel's time in Maine resulted in her classic book called The Sea Around Us, and it made it possible for Rachel to realize her dream. In 1953, she bought a summer home in Maine. 5 years later, Olga Owens Huckins and her husband Stuart observed birds and insects dropping dead in her Duxbury garden within 24 hours of the Massachusetts State Mosquito Control Program spraying DDT over her bird sanctuary at a rate of 2 pounds per acre. The day that Olga's property was sprayed, the pilot had extra DDT in his tank, and he decided to dump it right over Olga's land. As a former Boston newspaper reporter, Olga voiced her anger and frustration in an editorial. She wrote, "The, quote, harmless, unquote, shower bath killed 7 of our lovely songbirds outright. We picked up 3 dead bodies the next morning right by the door. They were birds that had lived close to us, trusted us, and built their nests in our trees year after year." After writing the paper, Olga wrote another letter to her old friend, Rachel Carson. Olga's letter sparked 4 years of research for Rachel, and she put it all together in a book called Silent Spring. Rachel's book opened people's eyes to the hazards of DDT, and public opinion eventually forced the banning of DDT in 1972. Today, Olga and Stuart's property has new homeowners, Judith and Robert Vose III continue to preserve the site as a bird sanctuary and also as a way to honor the brave women who stepped forward when it was put in harm's way. Olga Huckins and Rachel Carson. In Unearthed Words, today's Unearthed Words are from the Scottish children's author Robert Michael Ballantyne and his poem, The Butterfly's Ball and the Grasshopper's Feast. Come take up your hats, and away let us haste to the butterfly's ball and the grasshopper's feast. The trumpeter gadfly has summoned the crew, and the revels are now only waiting for you. And there came the beetle, so blind and so black, who carried the emmet, his friend, on his back. And there was the gnat and the dragonfly too, with all their relations, green, orange, and blue. And there came the moth, with his plumage of down, and the hornet and jacket of yellow and brown, who with him the wasp, his companion, did bring, but they promised that evening to lay by their sting. A mushroom their table, and on it was laid a water-dock leaf, which a tablecloth made. The viands were various to each of their taste, and the bee brought her honey to crown the repast. Then close on his haunches, so solemn and wise, the frog from a corner looked up to the skies. And the squirrel, well pleased, such diversions to see, mounted high overhead and looked down from a tree. Then the grasshopper came with a jerk and a spring. Very long was his leg, though but short was his wing. He took but 3 leaps and was soon out of sight, then chirped his own praises the rest of the night. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, A Tapestry Garden by Marietta and Ernie O'Byrne. This book came out in 2018, and the subtitle is The Art of Weaving Plants and Place. Gardenista said, "This is the fascinating story of a tireless and simpatico couple, a pair of gardeners who have spent more than 40 years assembling a mind-boggling collection of plants and installing them in unexpected, sometimes truly revolutionary combinations." Throughout the book, we are offered useful tidbits and advice, and informative sections on specific plants, such as ericemas, trilliums, bulbs, corms, tubers, and rhizomes, and hellebores. And the book is remarkably cheery and philosophical. And then this is from the publisher. Marietta and Ernie O'Byrne's garden, situated on 1.5 acres in Eugene, Oregon, is filled with an incredible array of plants from around the world. By consciously leveraging the garden's many microclimates, they've created a stunning patchwork of exuberant plants that is widely considered one of America's most outstanding private gardens. Profiles of the O'Byrne's favorite plants include hellebores, trilliums, ericemas, and alpine plants, and they include comprehensive growing information and tips on pruning and care. A Tapestry Garden captures the spirit of a very special place. This book is 264 pages of unexpected plant combinations, beautiful photography, garden inspiration, and is a testament to the power of microclimates in a garden. You can get a used copy of A Tapestry Garden by Marietta and Ernie O'Byrne and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $17. And finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day in 1933 that the Journal Times out of Racine, Wisconsin, posted a notice about a local sensation: Mrs. William Vivian's night blooming cereus. Here's what it said. Mrs. Kitty Shepard of Waukesha and Miss Lorraine Bremer of Milwaukee are making an attended visit at the William Vivian home. Mrs. Vivian had many visitors on Monday evening who came to see the rare plant, the night blooming cereus, which had 4 beautiful blossoms. Do tell. Well, the night blooming cereus is one of the desert's most unique plants, and it's a member of the cactus family. Native to Arizona and the Sonoran Desert, the plant is commonly called the Queen of the Night or the Princess of the Night. Now, generally, the cereus is grown as a houseplant, and it's often a pass-along plant, passed on from one friend to another. And you should know, if you get one, that as a plant, it can be a bit of a mess. It's generally rather untidy and unruly. But it can be pruned without hurting the cactus. And to create more of the cereus night blooming cactus, all you have to do is pot up the cuttings. Just keep in mind that the night blooming cereus won't flower until it's 4 or 5 years old. The number of blooms increases as the plant ages. But once it blooms, the white flower is genuinely incredible. It's almost 7 inches in diameter, and it smells divine, which is a good thing since you have it in your home. And it's true, it is a night blooming plant. The flowers start to bloom at 9 or 10 p.m., and they are fully open by midnight. Then the morning sun will cause the petals to fall off and die. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Wyoming, Minnesota with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, Kiana Rayleigh, Maddie Doyle, Natalie Decker, and Eric Begay. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media. You can follow the show on Instagram, and listeners always have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. All the stories and books that are featured on the show can be found over at thedailygardener.org, thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. Last but not least, you can share your own gardener greetings on the show by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.